When the facts bend reality, this is beyond plausible.
The window pane was frozen solid, a perfect sheet of ice that shouldn't have existed inside a heated cabin. Then came the sound, a wet, heavy thud against the glass, followed by the sharp crack of fracturing ice. The air inside the room turned thick and metallic, the scent of ozone and cold iron flooding his senses. His lungs seized, refusing to draw breath as the damp, sticky cold of the print seemed to seep through the glass. From beyond the frosted pane, a low, guttural whisper began to scratch at the silence, forming words that weren't quite human. It wasn't the print that terrified him, but the realization that nothing outside should have been able to reach that hot. The whispering stopped. The only sound was the rapid, frantic hammering of his own heart against his ribs. And then, a second handprint slammed into the glass, right beside the first. The camera slowly pulls back, revealing a small American street smothered in pristine snow, completely motionless. Dozens of identical, fresh footprints trail up to every single home, like some phantom procession had visited each doorstep. For 37 endless hours, not a soul stirred. No alarms pierced the stillness. No infants cried. No engines rumbled to life. What would you do if everyone in your town simply stopped? They waited in the oppressive quiet, the kind that settles in your bones. When they finally dared to look, the evidence was there in the moonlit snow. Something had passed from home to home in the dead of that silent night. A silent observer. Each print was a cold, damp impression of a presence that walked among them, unseen. Welcome to Stillwater, Minnesota. Sign stands weathered under a heavy sky. Across the street, laughter echoes from the diner's patrons, a brittle sound that doesn't reach their eyes. Children pedaled their bikes down the empty main street, their joyful shouts swallowed by the thick, humid air. This curated, nostalgic Americana is Stillwater's skin, and something watches from just beneath, or at least, it was. Picture postcard perfect, a tight-knit community of 1,200 souls, where everyone knew your name, your business, and what you brought to the annual harvest potluck. Our story centers on the Millers. John, a biology teacher, found comfort in his predictable routine, while his wife Sarah nurtured life in her florist shop. Their son Mikey lived with a singular childhood anxiety, the terror of missing the school bus each morning. This was the Miller family, an ordinary household bound by love and quiet fears. But beneath their domestic rhythm, something cold and unseen had already begun to stir. That Friday, before everything changed, began with ordinary moments. Sarah tended her plants, John marked essays, and young Mikey lost himself in plastic bricks. There was no portent, no sudden stillness in the air to warn them. It was, by every outward measure, a day utterly unremarkable. A light snow was forecast, but no one expected the heavy, suffocating silence that would follow. John helped Mikey with his solar system project, the last normal moment before the world outside grew still. Sarah closed the shop early, a metallic tang in the air as the last lock clicked shut. They ordered pizza, watched a movie, and went to bed, the oppressive winter quiet pressing in from the darkened windows. They had no idea this would be the final ordinary night they'd ever know. By 11:47 p.m., a gentle snow had blanketed the slumbering town, muffling all sound beneath its frozen veil. Then the air itself seemed to shimmer, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day. But this was cold, wrong. It left behind the faint scent of ozone, and a silence so profound it felt like pressure in the ears. The snow began just before midnight, and with it came a silence deeper than any winter could bring. Then, for a single impossible second, the falling flakes seemed to suspend their descent. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and cold iron, as if the atmosphere itself had thickened. Then, as abruptly as it had stopped, the snow resumed its fall, but now with a faint, whispering sound that wasn't there before. It wasn't an absence of sound, it was a swallowing of it. At dawn, alarms failed to scream. By 7, the streetlights remained lit, casting long cobalt shadows across the fresh, unbroken snow. No engines turned over. The Miller house stood unnaturally still, not even the familiar gurgle of the coffee machine breaking the morning's heavy quiet. Upstairs, John lay in a profound slumber, the digital alarm clock beside his bed flashing a frozen 9:17 a.m. in relentless red. The air in the room felt thick and stagnant, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old pennies. Outside his door, the hallway floorboards let out a single, sharp groan under an unseen weight. Sarah lay motionless. Mikey hadn't stirred. The camera pushed in on their faces, peaceful yet unnervingly still. John Miller was the first to wake, not to his alarm, but to a profound, gnawing ache of hunger that twisted in his gut. The air in the room felt thick and tasted faintly metallic, like old pennies on the tongue. A deep, hollow emptiness had taken root inside him, a void more terrifying than any sound the night could offer. The digital clock's red numerals glowed 7:13 p.m. He'd slept 19 hours straight, a realization that struck him with icy, immediate panic. Sarah? His voice was a raw whisper as he reached for her in the dark. He shook her shoulder, the motion desperate, the air thick with the scent of stale sleep, and something faintly metallic. Silence. Mikey! John bolted to his son's room. The boy lay breathing, trapped in a sleep far too deep for a child. A metallic scent hung in the air as John fled outside in his pajamas. The frozen dusk swallowed him, the cold seeping through the thin fabric. John stood alone on the snow-choked street, the only living thing in a neighborhood that had become a frozen diorama of abandonment. Not a single chimney plume broke the perfect stillness. Not a single curtain twitched behind the black glass panes. The street lamps hummed with a sickly, unnatural light that seemed to stain the snow rather than illuminate it. Every door was sealed tight, every driveway a smooth white expanse, as if the world had simply paused and forgotten to restart. He called out, his breath forming frantic clouds in the cold air. Only crushing silence answered, a void that swallowed his voice whole. The damp chill clung to his skin as a faint, metallic scent tinged the air. He wasn't alone for long. Across the street, old Mr. Henderson staggered onto his porch, disoriented. Then, lights snapped on at the Peterson house, sharp and sudden. One by one, like a current surging through a dead wire, the town of Stillwater stirred awake. A heavy, metallic scent clung to the air as the silence fractured. The relief was instant, overwhelming. A mass power outage? A gas leak? They had all, somehow, slept in. A thick, metallic scent hung in the motionless air. The chill of the sheets was the only thing that felt real. That collective, unnatural slumber wasn't rest. It was a void. The shared shame felt almost mundane, until Sheriff Hayes placed that call to the neighboring county. His face drained of color as the voice on the other end spoke. His gaze drifted to the waking town outside his frosted window, then down to his own boots by the door. The world beyond Stillwater's borders had not ceased its motion. For 37 hours, the world outside had moved on while Stillwater slept. Every call to the town went straight to dead air, each ring unanswered. A delivery driver turned back, reporting the whole place looked shut down. Windows dark, no movement anywhere. But at the county dispatch, the operator watched her screen. Every 911 line from Stillwater remained open, quietly listening, never calling. Dawn broke, casting a pallid light over the huddled townsfolk. They stood motionless in the street, clutching donated coffee like lifelines, their faces etched with bewildered dread. The air carried the metallic scent of fear, mingled with bitter coffee steam. No one spoke. The collective tension felt thick enough to choke on. A small girl tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed to the snow in their own front yard. The snow from the silent night remained pristine, untouched by plowing or tire. There, in that flawless white canvas, were the footprints. A single set. Their journey began where the woods met the schoolyard's edge, a deliberate procession into the deepening gloom. They moved with a slow, meandering intent, avoiding the roads entirely. Their destination was each front door, a chilling pilgrimage to every threshold. The air carried the faint, damp smell of upturned earth and something older, a cold, sticky dread settling over the silent homes. The prints didn't lead to the cars, but to the doors. There, they'd pause, the impressions deep and settled in the earth. It was as if someone or something stood there, waiting in the frigid dark. Then, the prints would simply move on to the next house. The worst part? The drone's footage revealed a chilling pattern. These footprints moved in unnervingly straight lines across lawns, over fences, and through dense hedges. They stopped methodically at each porch, as if conducting a thorough, deliberate search. The air carried a faint, metallic scent, like ozone after a storm. And the only sound was the distant, rhythmic drip of a gutter. The footprints were humanoid in shape, but the proportions were all wrong. The stride length was impossibly long, suggesting a gait no human could maintain. The weight distribution defied logic, as if the walker carried both nothing and everything simultaneously. Then, as abruptly as they began, the tracks vanished back into the shadowed tree line. The initial confusion hardened into a frigid, palpable dread. Something had moved through the room while they were incapacitated, a presence that felt both ancient and intimately close. It had visited each of them in turn, the air in its wake tasting of ozone and old dust. Had it paused at the windows, pressing unseen against the glass to observe them in their vulnerable stillness? John Miller stood in his living room, his gaze fixed on the front door. He'd tried the handles, but they were locked from the outside. Had whatever was out there somehow made his family fall into this unnaturally deep sleep on the couch? His eyes darted from the slumbering forms of his wife and children back to that silent, wooden barrier. The air in the room felt thick, tainted with a faint, metallic scent like ozone after a storm. A low, rhythmic scratching began to seep through the doorframe. Not wood on wood, but something wetter, more deliberate. Every muscle in his body coiled tight, a primal dread rooting him to the spot. He was alone, awake, and trapped with them. The door was the only thing between his family and the source of that sound. John, the biologist, was the one who voiced the unthinkable. This wasn't an attack. It wasn't a predator culling the herd. This was observation. It was a methodical cataloging, a patient, systematic checking of specimens. The air in the lab grew heavy with the scent of ozone and old paper. Those footprints weren't a threat. They were a receipt. A sticky, cold dread took hold as the implications settled in the silent room. The visitation left undeniable proof behind, but it was the creature's inhuman patience that truly shattered him. What was its purpose? The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and cold, damp earth. Its survey now complete, a profound question remained, heavy in the stagnant silence. Was the entity satisfied with what it had found here? A week had passed, and the town was trying to move on, but the footprints remained, preserved by the deep freeze, now just faint impressions beneath a fresh dusting of snow. An unspoken agreement settled over the community. People walked the long way around, their eyes fixed firmly on the ground ahead. It was a quiet, collective act of denial, a refusal to acknowledge the mark left upon their world. The official report called it a mass psychogenic event, triggered by an unexplained atmospheric anomaly. Case closed. The footprints? Dismissed as a hoax or some bizarre weather phenomenon, but the air there still carries a metallic tang, like ozone after a lightning strike. And the ground. It feels wrong, not just cold and damp, but unnervingly adhesive, as if reluctant to release what stepped there. But the residents of Stillwater know a deeper truth, one that settles in their marrow. Now, they leave lights burning through the night. The slightest groan of a floorboard after midnight seizes them with a sudden, breathless dread. That old harmony is gone, replaced by a shared, suffocating silence. The final image settles on the Miller house at midnight, where Mikey's bedroom window glows like a single, watchful eye. The air outside hangs thick with the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic, like cold iron. From within the deep quiet, a faint, rhythmic scratching sound whispers against the glass, almost lost beneath the moan of the wind. It is a still, final frame, holding a breath before an unspoken terror. He lies in deep slumber, unaware of the camera's gaze from the winter night outside. The lens tilts slowly downward to the fresh snow blanketing the ground beneath his window. The powder lies perfectly smooth and unmarked, a flawless canvas that tells a terrible truth. They whisper to themselves that it's over, but the undisturbed snow beneath his window screams otherwise. The observer, the collector, the quiet walker in the snow, got what it came for. But here's the question that haunts me, and should haunt you. What happens when an experiment is concluded? The data is gathered, the notes are taken, the specimens were tagged and reported. Beneath Mikey's window, the smooth snow lay undisturbed. Then, with agonizing slowness, the first indentation began to form. Not from the woods, from the Miller's own front door, a decision hangs in the air. Will they simply walk away, leaving their work behind? Or will a darker curiosity draw them back to inspect the aftermath? The air smells of damp earth and cold iron, a metallic tang that promises nothing good.